My perfect son-in-law, a registered nurse, volunteered to manage all my medications after my heart surgery. For 6 months, I swallowed whatever he handed me, until the pharmacist suddenly grabbed my arm and whispered, "I reported this to the FBI. You're in mortal danger." I just nodded. 3 days later, federal agents stormed the house, and my son-in-law turned white as a ghost when he realized his flawless murder scheme had just collapsed. Before continuing, subscribe to our new channel, where we tell stories about men who take revenge on their insolent children, sons-in-law, and daughters-in-law. Before continuing, subscribe to our new channel, where we tell stories about men who take revenge on their insolent children, sons-in-law, and daughters-in-law. My name is Ralph Edward Parker. I'm 68 years old, and I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, one of those neighborhoods where the houses all look like they cost more than they should, and the landscaping is always perfect. I spent 32 years as a U.S. Marshal, the kind of work that teaches you to read people faster than they can lie to you. Retired 7 years ago. Thought I'd spend my golden years relaxing, maybe finally master long-distance ham radio contacts, enjoy the desert sunsets. Life had other plans. 2 months ago, I had open-heart surgery, coronary artery bypass grafting. That's the fancy term for we cut your chest open and reroute your blood flow. The surgery went well, according to Dr. Robert Grant, my cardiologist. But recovery? That's been hell. 6 different medications 3 times a day. Metoprolol for my heart rate, lisinopril for blood pressure, atorvastatin for cholesterol, aspirin to keep my blood thin, clopidogrel for the same reason, and one more I can barely pronounce. The pill organizer on my nightstand looks like a pharmacy exploded. That's when Kevin stepped in. Kevin Larson, my son-in-law, married to my daughter Heather for 5 years now. 37 years old, works as a registered nurse at Phoenix Heart Center. The irony isn't lost on me. When he offered to take over managing your medications, Dad, I thought it was kindness. I was weak, exhausted, still had staples in my chest that pulled every time I moved. Having someone organize my pills, pick them up from the pharmacy, remind me when to take them, it felt like a blessing. "You just focus on healing, Dad Ralph," Kevin said that first week, his smile bright and professional. "I'll handle everything else." I remember nodding, grateful. Stupid old man. Kevin's always been the picture-perfect son-in-law. Always asks about my day. Always offers to help around the house. Always says the right things. But there's something about him that's never quite sat right with me. 32 years of hunting fugitives teaches you to spot the difference between genuine and performance. Kevin never looks you in the eye when he talks. Not really. His gaze slides past you like he's reading a script just over your shoulder. And his concern, it's mechanical, precise, like he practiced it in front of a mirror. Then there's Heather, my daughter, my only child. 34 years old, works in marketing for some tech startup downtown. She used to be so full of life, opinionated, stubborn, laughed like her mother used to. But over the past 5 years since she married Kevin, something changed. She became quieter, nervous. She doesn't argue with him, doesn't disagree, doesn't even seem to have her own thoughts anymore. Just nods along, like a puppet with cut strings. I asked her about it once, about 6 months after the wedding. "You seem different, sweetheart. Everything okay?" "I'm fine, Dad," she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes either. Just adjusting to married life. That should have been my first warning. They moved into my house about 3 years ago. "Just temporarily," Kevin said, "while we save for our own place." The house is big enough. 4 bedrooms, ranch style, the kind of place I bought back when I thought I'd fill it with grandkids someday. They took the guest wing. I barely noticed them most days. Kevin worked long shifts at the hospital. Heather worked from home half the time. We coexisted. Then came the surgery. For the first 3 weeks after I got home from the hospital, everything seemed fine. Kevin organized my pills into that 7-day organizer, morning, noon, night compartments all labeled. He'd bring them to me with a glass of water, watch me take them, then clear away the glass. Efficient, professional. I thought he was being thorough. Then I noticed something odd. It was week 4. I was sitting in my recliner, trying to tune my ham radio. My hands were shaking too much to adjust the fine controls, which frustrated me when Kevin brought my evening pills. I glanced down at the tablets in the little plastic cup he handed me. The metoprolol looked different. Wrong color, different shape. It was supposed to be round and white. This was oval and pink. "Kevin," I said, holding up the pill, "this doesn't look right." He didn't even hesitate. "Oh, the pharmacy switched suppliers. Generic versions, same active ingredient, just different manufacturer. Saves money on insurance." Made sense. I'd heard about that happening. I swallowed the pills and didn't think much of it, but that night, something was wrong. I couldn't sleep. Not the normal post-surgery insomnia. This was different. My heart was racing, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, hear it in my ears, like I'd just run a marathon. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling my pulse hammer against my ribs. 120 beats per minute. 130. I checked my watch. The numbers glowed in the dark. This isn't normal, I thought. This isn't stress. I got up, walked to the kitchen, drank cold water. Tried breathing exercises. Nothing helped. My heart kept racing. By the time the sun came up, I'd maybe slept 2 hours total. The next morning, Kevin found me at the kitchen table, exhausted. "Rough night, Dad?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. I looked at him. Really looked. His expression was concerned, but his eyes, there was something else there. Something that looked almost like anticipation. "Yeah," I said slowly. Heart wouldn't settle down. "That's normal after surgery," Kevin said, sipping his coffee. "Your body's still adjusting. Give it time." He patted my shoulder and left for work. I sat there for a long time after he was gone, staring at my pill organizer on the counter. Something my old partner used to say echoed in my head. "Trust your gut, Ralph. Your gut knows things your brain hasn't figured out yet." My gut was screaming. The next 2 months became a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The insomnia didn't stop. Every night, the same thing. I'd take my evening medications, and within an hour my heart would start racing. 2 hours of sleep, maybe 3 on a good night. I'd lie there in the dark, feeling my pulse hammer, counting ceiling tiles until dawn. My hands developed a tremor, not just occasional shaking, constant. I couldn't hold my radio tuning knob steady anymore. Couldn't write without my handwriting looking like a drunk spider had crossed the page. Then came the panic attacks. I'd never had anxiety in my life. I'd faced down armed fugitives, testified against cartel members, walked into situations that would make most people wet themselves. Fear was something I managed, controlled, but these attacks, they came out of nowhere. I'd be sitting in my chair, reading the newspaper, and suddenly my chest would tighten, my vision would tunnel, and I'd be absolutely convinced I was dying. No trigger, no reason, just pure irrational terror, flooding through me like ice water. My blood pressure became a roller coaster. One reading would be 160/95. 3 hours later, it had dropped to 90/60. Dr. Grant ran tests. EKG, echocardiogram, stress test, everything he could think of. "I don't see anything alarming, Mr. Parker," he said, reviewing the results in his office. "Your heart is healing well from the surgery. The bypass graphs look good. This might just be post-operative stress. Your body went through major trauma. Sometimes the nervous system takes time to recalibrate." I wanted to believe him, but 32 years of instinct were telling me something different. I started watching Kevin more closely. He never let me handle my own medications. Ever. He'd organize them, bring them to me, watch me take them. If I suggested getting them myself, he'd say, No, Dad, I've got it. You just rest." The pill organizer was always in his and Heather's wing of the house. Never on my nightstand. Never where I could access it without him knowing. One afternoon, while Kevin was at work and Heather was out running errands, I went into their bathroom. Told myself I was just looking for aspirin. The medicine cabinet was full of the usual stuff. Tylenol, bandages, Kevin's prescription for seasonal allergies. But in the back, behind the contact lens solution, I found a pharmacy bag. Recent. Dated from the week before. I pulled out the receipt and read the medication names. Adderall, 30 milligram tablets, 90 count bottle. Prescribed to Ralph Parker. My blood went cold. I don't have ADHD. I've never been prescribed Adderall in my life. I kept reading. Alprazolam, generic Xanax. 60 tablets. also in my name, also never prescribed to me, and albuterol inhaler, for asthma. I don't have asthma. I stood there in their bathroom holding that pharmacy bag and felt the floor drop out from under me. Someone was forging prescriptions, using my name, using my patient ID from the hospital system, and that someone was either Kevin or someone Kevin was working with. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, walked back to my room, sat on my bed, and stared at the wall. The pieces started falling into place. The racing heart, the insomnia, the panic attacks, the tremor. Those were all symptoms of stimulant abuse. Adderall in high doses causes exactly those problems, especially in someone with a compromised cardiovascular system, someone who just had open heart surgery. And the missing medications, the real ones, the metoprolol and lisinopril, that were supposed to be protecting my heart. If Kevin wasn't picking those up, wasn't giving them to me, then my heart had no protection. Add stimulants to an unprotected heart, and what do you get? A heart attack, a stroke, something that would look completely natural for a 68-year-old man recovering from bypass surgery. I thought about Heather, tried to remember when I'd last seen her disagree with Kevin about anything. Couldn't. She just went along with everything he said, everything he wanted. Was she part of this? Did she know? The thought made me sick. I remembered her as a little girl, 7 years old, pigtails, gap-toothed smile. She'd fallen off her bike trying to ride without training wheels, scraped her knees bloody. I'd carried her inside, cleaned the wounds, put on the bandages while she cried. "You're so brave," I'd told her. "Brave girls get back on the bike." She'd hugged me so tight. "I love you, Daddy." When did that little girl turn into someone who'd stand by while her husband poisoned her father? Or maybe she didn't know. Maybe Kevin was doing this alone and she was just oblivious, willfully ignorant. I didn't know which possibility was worse. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. What did I have? A pharmacy bag with prescriptions in my name. Kevin could claim I'd asked him to pick them up, that I was confused from the surgery. The word of a recovering heart patient versus a medical professional? That wouldn't go anywhere. I needed proof. Real, concrete, undeniable proof. And I needed to survive long enough to get it. That night, Kevin brought my evening medications as usual, watched me take them with that same mechanical smile. I swallowed the pills, drinking the entire glass of water, making sure he saw me do it. "Sleep well, Dad," he said, collecting the empty glass. "Thanks, son," I replied. As soon as he left, I went into my bathroom and stuck my finger down my throat, vomited everything up into the toilet, flushed, rinsed my mouth, brushed my teeth twice. I wasn't taking another pill from Kevin's hands. Not one. But I needed to make him think I was. Needed to keep up the act while I figured out how to expose him. 32 years of hunting criminals had taught me patience, taught me how to build a case, gather evidence, wait for the right moment. Kevin thought he was hunting me. Poor bastard had no idea he'd just become the prey. I sat in my bedroom that night, tremor in my hands, heart finally settling into a normal rhythm now that the stimulants were wearing off. Thought about my options. I couldn't trust the local police, not yet, not without evidence, but I knew someone who could help. Gerald Mitchell, the pharmacist who'd been filling my legitimate prescriptions for 15 years, the man who'd know exactly what medications I was actually prescribed and what I wasn't, the man who might have already noticed something was wrong. The next morning, after Kevin left for his shift at the hospital, I got in my car and drove to Mitchell's pharmacy. Time to find out just how deep this went. Mitchell's pharmacy sits on North Hayden Road, a small independent place sandwiched between a Starbucks and a dry cleaner. Not one of those big chain pharmacies where you're just a number in the system. Gerald Mitchell knows his customers, remembers their names, their medications, asks about their families. That's why I've been coming here for 15 years. The bell chimed as I walked in. The place smelled like it always did, antiseptic and paper, with a faint chemical undertone. Gerald was behind the counter, sorting through a stack of prescription forms. He looked up, and something flickered across his face. Recognition, yes, but also something else. Concern. "Mr. Parker," he said, setting down the papers. "I wasn't expecting to see you today. Kevin usually picks up your prescriptions." "I know," I said, walking up to the counter. That's why I'm here. I wanted to check my records personally, make sure everything's in order. Gerald's expression shifted. He glanced toward the back room, then at the empty pharmacy. We were alone except for a teenager stocking shelves in the vitamin aisle, headphones in, oblivious. Mr. Parker, Gerald said quietly, leaning forward, I've been hoping you'd come in. We need to talk. Privately. He gestured toward a small consultation room off to the side, the kind they use for flu shots and medication counseling. We went in. He closed the door. Gerald Mitchell is 52, owns this pharmacy, runs it with his wife. Tall guy, graying hair, wire-rimmed glasses that make him look professorial. I've watched him fill my prescriptions for years, always careful, always double-checking. The kind of pharmacist who takes his oath seriously. He pulled up his computer system, typed something, turned the monitor toward me. I wanted to talk to you about your son-in-law, he said. Kevin Larson. He's been picking up prescriptions in your name for the past 3 months, but there are some serious discrepancies. He brought up the records. I saw my name, my patient ID, the medications listed. Here's what your cardiologist actually prescribed after your surgery, Gerald said, pointing. Metoprolol, 50 milligrams twice daily. Lisinopril, 20 milligrams once daily. Standard post-bypass protocol. Right, I said. That's what Dr. Grant prescribed. But here's what Kevin's been picking up. He scrolled down. Metoprolol, only 25 milligrams, half the dose, and he hasn't picked up any lisinopril in 2 months. I stared at the screen. My heart medication. Half dose, and nothing for blood pressure. Then there's these, Gerald continued, pulling up another window. Adderall, 30 milligrams, 90 tablets. First filled 6 weeks ago, refilled 2 weeks ago. Alprazolam, 60 tablets. Albuterol, inhaler. I've never been prescribed any of those, I said. I know. Gerald's expression was grim. I cross-referenced with your medical records in the system. Dr. Grant never ordered them. No doctor did. Someone forged these prescriptions using your patient ID and insurance information. The room felt suddenly cold. Seeing it laid out like this, in black and white on the computer screen, it made it real in a way my suspicions hadn't. I noticed something was wrong about a month ago, Gerald said. Kevin came in to pick up what he claimed was your prescription for Adderall. I asked if you'd changed doctors, if there was a new specialist. He said you'd started seeing a psychiatrist for post-surgical depression. It seemed odd, but not impossible. Surgery can affect people that way. But you checked anyway, I said. I checked anyway, because the dose was high and you'd just had heart surgery. Stimulants and compromised cardiovascular systems don't mix. I called Dr. Grant's office. They had no record of referring you to a psychiatrist. No record of any new prescriptions. Gerald took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. Mr. Parker, I'm a pharmacist. I'm required by law to report suspected prescription fraud to the authorities. But this isn't just fraud. This is... He paused. Do you understand what these medications would do to someone in your condition? Kill me, I said flatly. Slowly. Make it look natural. He nodded. The Adderall would stress your heart. Racing pulse, elevated blood pressure, increased risk of arrhythmia or infarction. Without the metoprolol and lisinopril to protect you, your cardiovascular system would be completely vulnerable. For someone recovering from bypass surgery, taking high-dose stimulants while missing their cardiac medications, it's a recipe for a heart attack. I sat there listening to him explain in clinical terms how my son-in-law was trying to murder me. The tremor in my hands had stopped now. I'd been purging the pills for 2 days, and my system was starting to clear. But the rage that replaced it was steady, cold. How long has this been going on? I asked. At least 3 months that I can confirm, possibly longer. I only started paying close attention a month ago when the Adderall prescription seemed suspicious. 3 months. Kevin had been systematically poisoning me for 3 months. What are you going to do? Gerald asked. This is attempted murder, Mr. Parker. You need to go to the police. Not the police, I said. FBI. Prescription fraud crosses state lines, uses federal systems. This is their jurisdiction. Gerald blinked, then nodded slowly. You're right. I should have thought of that. You're going to file a report, I told him. Tell them you suspect prescription fraud involving my patient ID. Give them all the records you showed me. But here's the critical part. Don't mention that I know. Don't tell anyone, especially not my family, that I came here today. Why not? Because if Kevin knows I'm on to him, he'll either run or destroy evidence. I need him to think everything's going according to plan. I need him confident, careless, and I need time to build an airtight case. Gerald studied me. You were a U.S. Marshal, weren't you? 32 years. This isn't your first investigation. I smiled, but there was no humor in it. No, but it's the first time the suspect lived under my roof and called me Dad. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'll file the report today. But Ralph, you're in real danger. Real danger. If he thinks you're getting better, if he thinks the plan isn't working, he might escalate. I know, I said. That's why I'm going to keep playing sick. Keep taking his pills, he thinks. Keep deteriorating, he thinks. Let him believe he's winning. And then federal agents will knock on my door with a warrant, and Kevin will learn that trying to kill a federal marshal, even a retired one, is a very bad idea. We shook hands. Gerald promised to contact the FBI that afternoon. I left through the back exit. Didn't want anyone seeing me leave. Got in my car and sat there for a minute, hands on the steering wheel. The hunter had become the prey. Kevin thought he was so clever, so careful. Medical professional, knows how to forge prescriptions, knows what drugs would cause a natural death. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. That evening I drove home. Kevin was in the kitchen making dinner, pasta with some kind of cream sauce. The smell made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to act normal. Hey, Dad, he called out cheerfully. How was your day? Tiring, I said, shuffling to my recliner. Didn't sleep well again last night. That's rough. He came into the living room, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Maybe we should talk to Dr. Grant about adjusting your sleep medication. I looked at him, really looked at him. The concerned expression, the sympathetic tone, all of it performance, all of it lies. Maybe, I said. Dinner's almost ready. I'll bring you your evening meds in a few minutes. Thanks, son. He went back to the kitchen. I sat there, listening to him hum while he cooked. Humming. The man was trying to murder me, and he was humming in my kitchen. 20 minutes later, he brought me a small plastic cup with my medications and a glass of water. Here you go, Dad. Don't forget to take them with food. I took the cup. 3 pills. One was definitely Adderall. I recognized it now from the pharmacy bag I'd seen. The others, who knows? Could be Xanax. Could be something else entirely. Thanks, Kevin. I put the pills in my mouth, took a sip of water, made a show of swallowing. He watched, satisfied. Then he turned away. The moment his back was turned, I shifted the pills to the side of my mouth between my cheek and gum, waited until he was gone, then went to the bathroom, spit them out into the toilet, flushed. Later that night, lying in bed, I thought about Heather. Was she part of this? Did she know what her husband was doing? Tomorrow, I'd find out. Because tomorrow I was going to start really watching both of them, not as a father, not as a victim, as a predator. The next 2 weeks were the longest performance of my life. Every morning I'd shuffle out to the kitchen, moving slow, looking frail. Kevin would bring me breakfast and my morning medications. I'd take them, smile weakly, thank him. The moment he left for work, I'd go to the bathroom and vomit everything up. Rinse, brush, start the day. I couldn't keep doing that forever. Eventually, the lack of nutrition would actually make me sick. So I called an old colleague, Mark Douglas. We worked together in the Marshal Service back in the 90s, before he transferred to the DEA. He's stationed in Phoenix now, handles major drug trafficking cases. I reached him on his cell. Mark, it's Ralph Parker. Ralph, haven't heard from you in what, 3 years? How's retirement treating you? I need a favor, a big one, and I need you to keep it completely off the books. The tone in his voice shifted immediately. What's going on? I need you to get me prescriptions. My actual prescriptions from Dr. Robert Grant at Phoenix Heart Center. The real medications. I'll explain later, but right now I need metoprolol and lisinopril. Legitimate pharmacy fills, nothing questionable. There was a pause. Ralph, you're scaring me. What the hell is happening? Later, I said. I promise I'll explain everything. But right now, I need those medications, and I need you not to ask questions. Where do you want me to deliver them? My house. Come by tomorrow morning, 9:30. Kevin will be at work. Come to the side door, not the front. He agreed. True to his word, Mark showed up the next morning at exactly 9:30. I let him in through the garage entrance. He handed me a pharmacy bag. These are from my doctor, he said. Same medications you need, same dosages. I told him I was traveling and needed backups. No record connecting them to you. I owe you, I said. You owe me an explanation. What's going on, Ralph? I looked at him, really looked. Mark Douglas is 63 now, gray-haired, carries a few extra pounds around the middle, but he's still sharp. Still has that intensity that made him good at hunting drug traffickers. My son-in-law is trying to kill me, I said. He's been forging prescriptions, giving me stimulants, while withholding my heart medication, trying to trigger a heart attack. Mark's expression went from confused to furious in about 2 seconds. You called the police? FBI, through a pharmacist who noticed the fraud. They're investigating now. But I need to keep playing sick until they build a case. I need these medications so I don't actually die while pretending to be dying. Jesus Christ, Ralph. Yeah. What do you need from me? Your silence, for now. When this goes down, I'll need you to testify about the medications if it comes to that. But until then, nobody can know I'm getting real treatment. Mark nodded slowly. Your son-in-law, the guy who lives with you. Kevin Larson, registered nurse at Phoenix Heart Center, married to my daughter Heather. Does she know? I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he gripped my shoulder. You need anything else? Anything at all, you call me. Day or night, understand? I understand. Thanks, Mark. He left the way he came. I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and took my first real dose of metoprolol and lisinopril in 2 months. Within an hour, I could feel the difference. My heart rate slowed, steadied. The constant pressure in my chest eased. Over the next 5 days, my symptoms improved dramatically. The tremor in my hands disappeared. I started sleeping, really sleeping, not the fitful 2-hour stretches I'd been managing. The panic attacks stopped completely. My blood pressure normalized, but I couldn't let Kevin see any of that. So I kept up the act, complained about insomnia, mentioned the tremor. Even though my hands were steady now, I'd make them shake when Kevin was watching. Shuffled when I walked, even though my legs felt strong for the first time in months. Dad, you look exhausted, Kevin said one evening, bringing me my medications. His expression was concerned, but I could see it now. The calculation behind his eyes. The assessment. Is it working yet? Is the old man dying on schedule? I'm exhausted, I told him. Barely slept last night. Heart was racing again. Something flickered in his expression. Disappointment? Frustration? Maybe we should call Dr. Grant, he suggested. No, I'm sure it'll pass. Just takes time to heal. I watched his reaction carefully. He wanted me to see a doctor, but not for treatment. He wanted a doctor to document my deteriorating condition. Wanted medical records showing I was declining. So when I finally had that fatal heart attack, it would look expected. Natural progression. The man was thorough. I'd give him that. While Kevin thought I was dying, I was working. I'd set up a small hidden camera in my bedroom, one of those tiny things you can buy online, disguised as a digital alarm clock. Positioned it perfectly to capture my nightstand where I kept my medication bottles. Third night after I installed it, I got exactly what I needed. 2 a.m. I was in bed, pretending to sleep. I'd taken my real medications hours earlier, hidden in the bathroom. I heard my bedroom door open quietly. Through barely slitted eyes, I watched Kevin enter. He moved silently, carefully, went straight to my nightstand. The camera was recording everything. He opened the drawer, took out my pill bottles, the ones he thought contained my legitimate medications. I watched him unscrew the cap on the metoprolol bottle, saw him pull something from his pocket, small baggie, pour tablets into the bottle, screw the cap back on, shake it to mix them. Then the lisinopril bottle. Same thing. Add tablets, mix, replace. His face was clearly visible in the dim light from my alarm clock. No masks, no gloves. Just Kevin Larson, registered nurse, systematically tampering with his father-in-law's medications. He put everything back exactly as he'd found it, closed the drawer silently, left the room. I lay there in the dark, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. My hands weren't shaking, not anymore, but I was shaking with rage. Watching him do it, seeing it with my own eyes instead of just suspecting, made it real in a visceral way. The next morning, I downloaded the video footage to an encrypted USB drive, hid it in my ham radio equipment in the basement. Kevin never went down there, didn't understand the radio setup. Then I reset the camera to keep recording. That evening, something else happened that answered my biggest question. I was in my study, actually the converted third bedroom where I keep my radio equipment and some files, when I heard voices from the hallway. Kevin and Heather, talking. Their bedroom door was open and sound carries in this house. How much longer? Heather's voice. Strained, nervous. I don't know. His heart should have given out by now. The Adderall dose alone should be triggering serious arrhythmia. Maybe we should just stop. This is taking too long. What if someone notices? My heart, which had been beating steady and calm all day, suddenly felt like it had been dunked in ice water. She knew. Heather knew. Nobody's going to notice, Kevin said. I'm a cardiac nurse. I know what I'm doing. His symptoms all look like normal post-surgical complications. And when he finally has the heart attack, it'll be completely expected. Old man bypass surgery, recovering poorly. It's textbook. But what if... Heather. His voice went hard. We've been over this. The house is worth $847,000. His retirement accounts are over $300,000. Life insurance is another $125,000. Once he's gone, we're set. We can move to California like you wanted. Start fresh. A long pause. Then Heather, quieter. I just wish there was another way. There isn't. He's not going to change his will voluntarily, and we can't wait another 20 years for him to die naturally. We need this now. I stood there in my study, hand on the doorframe to keep myself steady. My daughter, my little girl, the one I'd carried into emergency rooms, the one I'd taught to ride a bike, the one I'd walked down the aisle 5 years ago. She knew her husband was poisoning me, and her only concern was that it was taking too long. I wanted to storm into that room, wanted to confront them both, drag them out of my house by their collars. But I didn't, because I needed them confident, needed them careless, needed them to think they were still winning. That night, my ham radio crackled to life with an encrypted signal. I recognized the pattern. Federal frequency, coded transmission. I grabbed my headset. KE7RPX receiving, I transmitted. Mr. Parker, this is Special Agent Lisa Torres, FBI Phoenix Field Office. Gerald Mitchell filed his report. We've verified the prescription fraud. We're opening a formal investigation. What's the timeline? I asked. We need to coordinate with the DEA on controlled substance violations, verify the paper trail, get warrants for the Kevin Larson's phone and computer records. 3 days, maybe 4. Can you hold out that long? I can hold out as long as you need, I said, but I've got additional evidence. Video of him tampering with my medications. Recorded 2 nights ago. Can you get that to us? I'll have it ready when you come. We'll execute the warrant early morning. Be prepared. And Mr. Parker, stay safe. If he suspects anything. He won't, I said. I'm a better actor than he thinks. 3 days. I had to keep up this performance for 3 more days. Then Kevin Larson was going to learn what happens when you hunt a federal marshal. The next morning at breakfast, Kevin smiled at me across the table. Dad, you're looking a little better today. Maybe the medications are finally working. I forced my hands to tremble slightly as I lifted my coffee cup. Still not sleeping well, but maybe you're right. Maybe I'm turning the corner. That's great to hear, he said, and his smile never reached his eyes. 3 more days, I thought. Just 3 more days. The morning after Agent Torres confirmed the FBI would be coming, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Victor Stewart, an estate attorney whose office sits on 16th Street downtown. I'd never met the man, but he came highly recommended by Mark Douglas. If you need to lock down your assets legally, Mark had said, Stewart's your guy. The receptionist tried to schedule me for the following week. I told her it was urgent. She put me on hold, came back 2 minutes later. Mr. Stewart can see you this afternoon at 2. The second call was harder. Sherry Coleman, private investigator, former Phoenix PD detective, runs her own firm now. I'd never worked with her during my marshal days, but I knew her reputation. Thorough, discreet, relentless. I need surveillance on 2 people, I told her, my daughter and her husband. I need to know if they're working together on something. What kind of something? The kind that involves me dying and them inheriting? Brief pause. I'll come by your place this afternoon. 1 o'clock. We'll discuss details. I spent the rest of the morning maintaining my act. Kevin worked the early shift, left the house at 6. Heather was in her room, working remotely. I shuffled around, complained about not sleeping, made myself toast I could barely finish. The perfect picture of a declining old man. At 1 o'clock sharp, Sherry Coleman knocked on my door. She was maybe 45, dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, no-nonsense expression that reminded me of every good cop I'd ever worked with. We sat in my study, the room with my radio equipment, where Kevin and Heather never came. I explained everything, the medications, the forged prescriptions, Gerald Mitchell's discovery, the FBI investigation. Then I told her what I'd overheard, Kevin and Heather discussing my death like it was a business transaction. But I need proof, I said. Real proof. Something the FBI can use if they decide to investigate Heather too. Sherry pulled out a small notebook. You want audio surveillance on their private conversations? Yes. That's legally complicated. Arizona's a one-party consent state, which means I can't plant bugs in your house without someone's permission. But I can follow them, observe them in public spaces, record conversations they have where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. Like in a car? If they're driving somewhere? Exactly. She tapped her pen against the notebook. Give me 2 days. I'll stick to them like glue whenever they're together outside the house. What are your rates? $500 a day plus expenses. I nodded. Do it. We shook hands. She left through the back door, same as Mark had. At 2 o'clock, I drove downtown to Victor Stewart's office. The building was one of those modern glass towers, all reflective surfaces and expensive views. Stewart's firm occupied the 8th floor. Victor Stewart himself was 64, gray-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost what I had used to make in a month as a marshal. But his handshake was firm, his eyes sharp. Mr. Parker, he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk, Mark Douglas spoke highly of you. Said you might need some estate planning assistance. That's putting it mildly. I sat down. I need to make sure that when I die, especially if I die under suspicious circumstances, certain people don't inherit a single penny. Stewart's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest. Tell me everything. I did. The whole story. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set down his pen. Mr. Parker, what you're describing is attempted murder. Have you contacted law enforcement? FBI's investigating now. They'll be executing a warrant in less than 48 hours. Good! He leaned back in his chair. But you're right to protect yourself legally. Even with criminal charges, your daughter could potentially claim she had no knowledge of her husband's actions. Without criminal convictions for both of them, she might successfully contest a will that disinherits her. So what do? We create an estate plan that's ironclad. First, a new will. Will include specific language stating you're of sound mind, you understand the consequences of your decisions, and you're deliberately excluding certain individuals. We'll name specific reasons, not just, I don't like them, but concrete actions they've taken. He pulled up a document template on his computer. Second, we'll create a detailed memorandum, not part of the will itself, but a supporting document that explains your reasoning in detail. You'll describe the timeline of events, the evidence you've gathered, everything. It won't be admissible in criminal court, but it will support the will if contested. What about my assets? The house is worth $847,000. Retirement accounts total about $320,000. Life insurance is $125,000. Stewart typed numbers into a calculator. $1,292,000. Total. Significant estate. Here's what I recommend. We create a new will leaving everything to a charity. Perhaps the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation. They provide support to families of fallen federal agents, appropriate given your career. And Heather and Kevin? They each receive $1, not zero. That makes the will easier to contest, as they could argue they were accidentally omitted. $1 proves you deliberately considered them and chose to leave them virtually nothing. I like this guy. We spent the next hour drafting documents. Stewart's paralegal brought in a notary. I signed everything, had it witnessed by two people I'd never met, Stewart's secretary and an associate attorney. Nobody related to me, nobody who could be accused of undue influence. One more thing, Stewart said as we finished. You mentioned that if you die under suspicious circumstances, you want certain actions taken. I can serve as executor of your estate. That means I control distribution of assets, handle any legal challenges. If your daughter tries to contest the will, she'll be fighting me, not you. How much does this cost? For the will, memorandum, and associated documents, $5,000. Executor fees will be 3% of the estate value, payable only upon your death and only after the estate is settled. I wrote him a check. $5,000 well spent. Before I left, I handed Stewart a sealed envelope. Inside, copies of the video footage showing Kevin tampering with my medications, printouts of the pharmacy records Gerald had given me, my own written timeline of events, and copies of my medical records from Dr. Grant. If something happens to me, I said, that contains everything the FBI and prosecutors will need. Stewart locked it in his office safe. It'll be here when you need it. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. The legal protection was in place. Now I just needed Sherry to confirm what I already suspected about Heather's involvement. That evening, Kevin came home from his shift, made dinner, some kind of chicken dish with rice, brought me my medications. Here you go, Dad, he said, that familiar mechanical smile in place. I took the pills, palmed them like I'd been doing for days now, smiled weakly. Thanks, son. Don't know what I'd do without you. Just get better, okay? We need you around. The hypocrisy was almost impressive. 2 days later, Sherry called my cell. I've got something. Can I come by? Kevin's at work until 6. Heather's out. Salon appointment. Come now. She arrived 20 minutes later, carrying a small digital recorder. They went to lunch yesterday, she said, sitting across from me in my study. Casual place in Tempe. Outdoor patio seating, lots of ambient noise. They thought they had privacy. They didn't. She pressed play. Kevin's voice, clear and unmistakable. How much longer do you think it'll take? Heather, quieter, more nervous. I don't know, Kev. He still looks awful. Maybe it's working. It should have worked by now, the dose I'm giving him. Combined with withholding the real heart meds, his system should be shutting down. Long pause. Then Heather. What if we just stopped? Waited for him to die naturally? Heather, we've been over this. He could live another 10, 15 years. We can't wait that long. The house alone is worth $847,000. Once he's gone and we sell it, we split the money 50-50. Move to California like we planned. Fresh start. Another pause. Heather's voice barely audible. I hate that it has to be this way. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just how it is. He's old. He's sick. He's not going to get better. We're just helping nature along. The recording continued for another few minutes. Discussion about which neighborhood in California they wanted to move to, how quickly they could liquidate my assets. Heather never once objected to the plan, never once suggested they stop. Her only concern was that it was taking too long. When the recording ended, I sat there in silence. Sherry watched me carefully. You okay? She asked. My daughter, I said quietly, is discussing selling my house while I'm still alive, planning her new life with money she'll get from my death, and her biggest complaint is that I'm dying too slowly. I'm sorry, Ralph. I looked at her. Don't be. I needed to know. Now I do. She left the recording on a USB drive. I added it to the envelope in Stewart's safe. That night, I sat in my bedroom. My real medications taken hours ago, my health actually improving for the first time in months, and I cried. First time I'd cried since my wife died, 34 years ago. Not for myself, for the daughter I'd raised, the little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her bedtime stories. That little girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd chosen money over her own father's life. My phone buzzed. Text from Agent Torres. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Be home. Do not warn them. I deleted the text. Went to bed. Slept better than I had in months despite everything. Tomorrow, Kevin Larson was going to learn that trying to murder a federal marshal, even a retired one, was the worst mistake of his life. The morning started like any other. At least it looked that way. Kevin got up at 7, showered, made coffee. Heather emerged around 7:30, still in her pajamas, yawning. I shuffled into the kitchen at 8, moving slow, playing the role I'd perfected over the past 2 weeks. "Morning, Dad," Kevin said cheerfully, pouring me coffee. "How'd you sleep?" "Not great," I mumbled. Heart was racing again around 3. He frowned, all concern. "Maybe we should call Dr. Grant today. Get you checked out." "Maybe." I took the coffee cup with deliberately shaking hands. "Let me see how I feel later." Heather was scrolling through her phone, barely paying attention. Kevin started making breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast. The smell made my stomach turn, but not from illness. From rage. This man was casually making breakfast while planning my death. At 8:45, I excused myself, went to my study, sat in my recliner, pretended to doze. Through barely open eyes, I watched the clock. 8:50, 8:55, 9 o'clock, 9:02, 9:04. Knock at the door, sharp, authoritative. The kind of knock that says, law enforcement. Kevin was in the kitchen, putting dishes in the dishwasher. "I'll get it," he called out. I heard him walk to the front door, heard the locks disengage, heard the door open, then silence. Complete, dead silence. I stood up slowly, walked toward the foyer, saw Kevin standing frozen in the doorway, his face absolutely bloodless, white as paper, white as a ghost. On the doorstep stood 4 people in dark suits. The woman in front held up a badge, FBI shield, gleaming in the morning sun. "Kevin Oliver Larson?" Her voice was professional, neutral. "Special Agent Lisa Torres," exactly as I'd imagined her from our radio conversations. Kevin's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. "FBI," Torres continued. "We have a warrant to search this premises in connection with prescription fraud and attempted murder. Are you Kevin Oliver Larson?" I don't... Kevin's voice cracked. He swallowed hard, tried again. "I don't understand." "What prescription fraud?" Behind Torres, 3 other agents waited, all business. One of them, a tall man with graying hair, held a folder thick with documents. "Mr. Larson, you have the right to remain silent," Torres began, pulling out a card to read from. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." "Wait!" Kevin's voice went shrill. "There's been a mistake. I'm a nurse. I would never." "Step aside, please." Torres moved forward, and Kevin stumbled backward. That's when Heather appeared from the hallway. "What's going on?" She saw the agents, saw Kevin's face. "Kevin, what's happening?" "Ma'am, are you Heather Ann Parker Larson?" Torres asked. "Yes, but..." "We have a warrant to search this residence. Please remain in the living room." Heather's eyes found mine. I was standing in the doorway to my study, watching everything. Her expression went from confused to terrified in seconds. "Dad!" Her voice was small. "Dad, what's happening?" I walked forward slowly, looked at Kevin, who was now pressed against the wall, breathing hard, looked at Heather, whose hands were shaking. "It's not a mistake, Heather," I said quietly. My voice was calm, cold. "Kevin's been forging prescriptions, using my patient ID to get medications I was never prescribed, medications that were killing me." Kevin's face somehow got even paler. "That's not... I never... Dad, you have to tell them..." "Tell them what, Kevin?" I turned to face him fully. "Tell them about the Adderall, the 90 tablets you picked up using my name, even though I've never been prescribed stimulants? Tell them how you were giving me those instead of my actual heart medication, how you were trying to trigger a heart attack that would look natural." His mouth worked soundlessly, a fish out of water, gasping. "Mr. Larson," Torres said, "we have records from Mitchell's pharmacy showing multiple fraudulent prescriptions filled using Ralph Parker's patient identification. We have testimony from the pharmacist, Gerald Mitchell, who reported the irregularities. We have medical records proving these medications were never legitimately prescribed. One of the other agents stepped forward. We also have a warrant to seize your computer, your phone, and any electronic devices containing potential evidence. This is insane, Kevin found his voice finally, but it was high-pitched, panicked. I'm a registered nurse. I take care of my father-in-law. I would never... Then you won't mind if we examine your computer, Torres said calmly. Kevin's eyes darted toward his bedroom. Just for a second, but I saw it. So did Torres. Agent Wilson, she said to the tall man behind her, start with the bedroom. The next 3 hours were surreal. Federal agents moved through my house like a surgical team. They photographed everything, bagged evidence, asked questions. They found Kevin's computer in his bedroom, a laptop sitting on his desk. When they powered it on, Kevin actually made a noise, a sort of strangled gasp. What's wrong, son? I asked quietly. Something on there you don't want them to see? He didn't answer, just stared at the laptop like it was a snake. Agent Wilson spent 20 minutes examining the computer, while Kevin stood there, sweating visibly now. His shirt collar was dark with moisture. His hands trembled. Agent Torres, Wilson called out. You need to see this. Torres went into the bedroom, came back out 5 minutes later, her expression unchanged but something sharp in her eyes. Mr. Larson, she said, we found PDF templates of prescription forms on your computer. Multiple variations, different doctor signatures, all dated within the past 4 months. Kevin's legs actually buckled slightly. He caught himself on the wall. We've also found internet search history. Torres pulled out her phone, read from it. How much Adderall causes heart attack? Can heart medication be traced? Prescription fraud detection methods, all searched from your IP address. Heather made a sound, a whimper almost. She was standing near the couch, hugging herself, tears streaming down her face. The agents moved to the bathroom next, found my pill organizer, the one Kevin had been filling, opened each compartment, examined the contents. These are Adderall, one agent said, pointing to the morning Monday slot. 30 milligram tablets. Those should be metoprolol, I said. My heart medication. They bagged the entire organizer as evidence. In Kevin's nightstand, they found something even more damning. A pharmacy bag with my name on it. Inside, a bottle labeled metoprolol 50 milligrams, but filled with small orange tablets that were definitely not metoprolol. Empty pill bottles, Torres said, refilled with different medications to make them look legitimate. Kevin was breathing so hard now I thought he might hyperventilate. His face had gone from white to gray to a sickly green color. Kevin Oliver Larson, Torres said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for prescription fraud, identity theft, and attempted murder. No, the word burst out of him. No, this is wrong. I was trying to help him. I'm a nurse. I take care of people. Torres moved behind him, professionally clicking the cuffs into place. You have the right to remain silent. You should probably exercise that right now. Kevin's eyes found mine, desperate, pleading. Dad Ralph, he said, voice breaking. Please, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them I was just trying to help you. Please. I looked at him, really looked at him, saw the fear in his eyes, the panic, the realization that his carefully constructed plan had collapsed completely. You were helping me die, I said quietly. There's a difference. He started crying then. Actual tears. I never wanted... It wasn't supposed to... Please, you have to believe me. Take him, Torres said to one of the agents. They led Kevin toward the door. He was sobbing now, stumbling, trying to turn back to look at me. This is a mistake, he shouted. I'm innocent. Dad, please. The door closed behind him. Silence fell over the house. Heather collapsed onto the couch, her whole body shaking. Dad, she whispered. Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know anything about this. I turned to look at her. My daughter, my only child. Then I pulled out my phone. Found the audio file Sherry Coleman had given me. Pressed play. Heather's own voice filled the room. How much longer do you think it'll take? Kevin's response. The dose I'm giving him, combined with withholding the real heart meds, his system should be shutting down. Heather again. What if we just stopped? Kevin. We can't wait that long. The house alone is worth $847,000. I watched Heather's face as she listened to her own voice discussing my death, planning the sale of my house, talking about moving to California with money from my estate. Her face went through several shades, red, white, gray. Her mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Still want to tell me you didn't know? I asked. She tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. That's not... I wasn't... Agent Torres, who'd been watching this exchange carefully, stepped forward. Ms. Parker Larson, we're going to need you to come downtown for questioning. I want my lawyer, Heather whispered. That's your right. You're not under arrest, yet. But we will be investigating your involvement. Torres and her team finished collecting evidence. Took Kevin's computer, both their phones, the pill organizer, the forged medication bottles, documents from Kevin's desk. Photographed everything, cataloged everything. When they finally left, I stood in my living room, my house that was suddenly very quiet, and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just emptiness. My son-in-law was in handcuffs, facing federal charges. My daughter had just heard herself on recording, discussing my death like it was a business transaction, and I was alive, still breathing, still here. I'd won. So why did it feel like I'd lost everything? The days after Kevin's arrest felt like watching a building collapse in slow motion. You see the cracks spreading, hear the groan of failing supports, but the final crash is inevitable. Kevin was being held in Maricopa County Jail. No bail posted. His parents, decent people who'd raised what they thought was a decent son, refused to help him. I heard through Agent Torres that his mother had said, "You dug this hole yourself, Kevin. You lie in it." The federal prosecutor's office moved fast. Within 3 days, Kevin was formally charged with 3 felony counts. First, prescription fraud under federal law. Using interstate computer systems to forge controlled substance prescriptions carries up to 20 years in federal prison. Second, attempted murder under Arizona state law. The prosecution argued that systematically poisoning someone over months showed premeditation, malice, and intent. 25 years maximum. Third, insurance fraud. Turned out Kevin had tried to increase my life insurance policy 2 months ago. Bumped it from $125,000 to $500,000. He'd forged my signature on the application. The insurance company had flagged it, called me directly to confirm. I'd said no, thought it was a mistake. Now it made perfect sense. Bail was set at $500,000. Kevin didn't have it. His parents wouldn't pay it. He sat in jail waiting for trial. Meanwhile, Heather was falling apart. The morning after Kevin's arrest, she showed up at my house. I heard her car pull into the driveway around 10, heard her footsteps on the porch, then the sound of a key sliding into the lock. It didn't turn. I'd changed the locks that same night. Called a 24-hour locksmith, had every door rekeyed. Cost me $400, worth every penny. "Dad?" Her voice came through the door. "Dad, why won't my key work?" I was in my study, drinking coffee, listening to her try the front door, then the side door, then the back. Finally, she started knocking, then pounding. "Dad, please, I need to talk to you." I walked to the front door, didn't open it, just stood there, looking at her through the screen door's mesh. She looked terrible, hair unwashed, eyes puffy and red, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. "Heather," I said. "Dad." She pressed against the screen. "Dad, please let me in. I need to explain." "Explain what?" "About Kevin. About all of this. It's not what you think." I crossed my arms. "What do I think?" That I knew. But I didn't. I swear I didn't know what he was doing. I pulled out my phone, opened the audio file Sherry Coleman had sent me, pressed play. Heather's voice came out of the phone speaker, tinny but clear. "How much longer do you think it'll take?" Kevin's response. "The dose I'm giving him, combined with withholding the real heart meds, his system should be shutting down." Heather. "What if we just stopped?" Kevin. "We can't wait that long. The house alone is worth $847,000. Once he's gone and we sell it, we split the money 50-50, move to California, like we planned." I watched her face as she listened, watched the blood drain from it, watched her mouth open and close without sound. I let the recording play for another 30 seconds, their discussion of which California neighborhood they preferred, how quickly they could liquidate my retirement accounts, then stopped it. "Still want to tell me you didn't know?" I asked. She was shaking. "That's not." I didn't mean... You didn't mean what? Didn't mean to discuss selling my house while I was still alive? Didn't mean to plan your new life with my money? I was scared. Her voice cracked. Kevin said if I told anyone, if I tried to stop him, he'd leave me. And I'm 34, Dad. Where am I going to find someone else at 34? I stared at her. My daughter, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike, walked down the aisle at her wedding, held when she cried after her first heartbreak. So you chose a man who was murdering your father, I said quietly, over your father who raised you, because you were afraid of being alone. No, it's not like that. It's exactly like that. You heard the recording, Heather. Your own voice. You knew what Kevin was doing, and your only concern was how long it was taking. She started crying. Big, ugly sobs. I didn't want him to do it. I told him it was wrong. When? When did you tell him it was wrong? She didn't answer. Because in that recording, you never once said stop. You never said this is murder. You never said I'm calling the police. You just asked if maybe you could wait for me to die naturally, as if that was the reasonable compromise. Dad, please! The FBI knows about you, Heather. Agent Torres already has that recording. She's going to call you in for questioning. Her face went white. What? You were part of a conspiracy to commit murder. Even if you didn't actively participate, you had knowledge and didn't report it. That's called being an accessory. You should get a lawyer. But I didn't do anything. It was all Kevin. You did something, I said. You stood by and watched. That's still something. True to my word, Agent Torres called Heather in the next day. I wasn't there for the interrogation, but Torres filled me in afterward. Heather had tried to maintain her innocence at first, said she had no idea what Kevin was doing, but when confronted with the audio recording, she'd broken down. Admitted she'd known for maybe 2 months that Kevin was doing something with my medications, claimed she thought he was just adjusting doses, making them more effective. Did you believe that? Torres had asked her. Long pause, then quietly, no. Torres told me they weren't charging Heather. Not enough evidence of active participation, but it was close, very close. She knew, Torres said to me over the phone. She absolutely knew. But proving she was part of the conspiracy versus just knowing about it? That's a hard line to draw in court. Doesn't matter, I said. I know. That's enough. Because it was. The law might not punish Heather, but I would. Through Victor Stewart, I learned more details of Kevin's plan. Apparently, he'd been researching it for 6 months before my surgery. Had it all mapped out. The forged prescriptions, the dosages, the timeline, 3 to 4 months of systematic poisoning, then the natural heart attack. After I died, he and Heather would inherit everything. House worth $847,000. Retirement accounts totaling $320,000. Life insurance of $125,000, or $500,000 if his forged application had gone through. Total, nearly $1.3 million. They'd planned to sell the house immediately, split the money, move to San Diego, where Heather had always wanted to live. Kevin would get a nursing job at one of the hospitals there. They'd buy a condo overlooking the ocean, start fresh. All it would cost was my life. The thing that got me, really got me, was how casual it had been. Not a crime of passion, not a spontaneous decision. This was planned, calculated, executed over months. Kevin had gone to work every day, come home, made me dinner, asked about my health, all while systematically poisoning me. And Heather had watched, had known, had said nothing. That hurt worse than anything Kevin had done. A week after the arrest, Victor Stewart came to see me at the house. We have a problem, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Or rather, you have a problem. Legally speaking, even with Heather's knowledge of the plan, she wasn't charged, which means under Arizona law, she's still your legal heir. If something happens to you, even now, she inherits everything. The will we drew up can be contested. She can argue undue influence, mental incompetence, any number of things. And with her not being criminally charged, she has standing to challenge it. I sat back in my chair. So what do I do? Stewart smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who'd already thought 3 moves ahead. We remove the assets from your estate, he said. You can't inherit what doesn't exist. Explain. You sell the house. Now. While you're alive. Put the proceeds into an irrevocable trust with a named beneficiary that isn't you. You transfer your retirement accounts the same way. You rewrite your will to leave $1 to Heather, not zero, which can be contested as an oversight, but $1 which proves intent, and everything else to the trust. Can I do that? Absolutely. You're of sound mind, you're not under duress, and you have every right to dispose of your property as you see fit. How long would this take? A month, maybe 6 weeks if we move fast. I can have the house listed by next week. Market's good right now. We should get asking price or close to it. The trust documents I can draft in a few days. I thought about it, thought about Heather's face when she learned I'd sold the house she grew up in, the house where she'd had birthday parties, prom photos, Christmas mornings. Then I thought about her voice on that recording. The house alone is worth $847,000. Do it, I said. All of it. We listed the house the following week. I priced it aggressively, $847,000, exactly what the appraisal had said. Within 3 days, I had 2 offers. I accepted one from a young couple, Jennifer and Robert Griffin, both teachers, late 20s, expecting their first child. They were so excited about the house, about starting their family here. Good. The house deserved a family that would love it, not someone who saw it as a liquidated asset. The sale closed in 30 days. I signed the papers, handed over the keys, and watched the Griffins walk through their new home with wonder on their faces. $847,000 went straight into an irrevocable trust, managed by Victor Stewart. After my death, it would go to the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation. While I was alive, I couldn't touch it. It wasn't mine anymore. My retirement accounts, $320,000, went the same way. Transferred to the trust. Locked down. Then I bought a small condo in Tempe. 2 bedrooms, balcony overlooking Tempe Town Lake. Paid $185,000 in cash. The remaining money from the house sale went into the trust. New will, Heather gets $1. Trust gets everything else. The will included specific language. I, Ralph Edward Parker, being of sound mind and free will, deliberately and consciously disinherit my daughter, Heather Ann Parker Larson, due to her participation in and knowledge of a conspiracy to cause my death for financial gain. Victor had 3 different doctors certify my mental competence, had it all documented, notarized, witnessed by people who'd never met me before that day. Ironclad. When Heather found out about the house sale, she lost it completely. I was packing boxes in what used to be my bedroom when I heard her car screech into the driveway, heard her run up to the door. The Griffins had already moved in, but I had permission to finish clearing my personal items. She burst in without knocking. Found me in the bedroom, surrounded by boxes. "What did you do?" she screamed. "What did you do?" I looked up from the box I was packing. "Sold my house. This isn't your house. This is our house. This is where I grew up." "It was my house," I said calmly. "My name on the deed. And I sold it to a nice couple who'll actually live here and raise their family. Unlike you, who was planning to flip it the moment I was dead." Her face contorted. "You can't do this. This is my inheritance." "You don't have an inheritance. Not anymore. I'll sue you. I'll take you to court. I'll prove you're not mentally competent to make these decisions." I pulled a folder from one of the boxes, handed it to her. Inside, 3 medical evaluations from different psychiatrists, all dated from the previous week, all certifying that I was of sound mind, fully capable of making informed decisions about my estate. She looked at the documents. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pages. "You planned this," she whispered. "You planned all of this." "Yes," I said, "just like you and Kevin planned to kill me. Difference is my plan was legal." She started crying. Not the manipulative tears from before, real, desperate sobs. This was supposed to be mine. We needed this. We were going to start over in California. We had plans. You had plans built on my corpse, Heather. That's not an inheritance. That's blood money. I'm your daughter. You were my daughter, I said quietly. That little girl died when she chose a murderer over her father. You're just a stranger who looks like her. She collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing. Please, please, Dad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. Just, please don't do this. I closed the box I'd been packing. taped it shut, looked at her. I already did it. House is sold. Money's in an irrevocable trust. After I die, it goes to charity. You get $1. That's what your inheritance is worth. $1. Same as what I think of you. She tried to speak, but nothing came out except more sobs. I picked up the box, walked past her, carried it out to my car, loaded it in the trunk, came back for another one. She was still standing in the doorway when I left for the last time. Moving into the Tempe condo should have felt like a fresh start. New place, new neighborhood, away from all the bad memories, but I couldn't escape the weight of what had happened. I set up my ham radio in the second bedroom, unpacked my clothes, arranged furniture, went through all the motions of settling in. But at night, lying in an unfamiliar bed, I kept thinking about Heather, about the little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, about teaching her to swim at the community pool, about her high school graduation, how proud I'd been, about walking her down the aisle 5 years ago, seeing her smile at Kevin, like he was her whole world. Had there been signs even then? Had I missed something? Or had Kevin slowly changed her, warped her into someone who could stand by while he committed murder? I didn't know. Probably never would. 2 weeks after I moved out, Heather made one last attempt. She showed up at my new condo. I don't know how she got my address. Probably from public records, property sale documents. She knocked on my door around 8 in the evening. I looked through the peephole, saw her standing there looking small and broken. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Didn't invite her in, just stood in the doorway. "What do you want, Heather?" "To talk." Her voice was quiet. "Please, just 5 minutes." "Say what you need to say." She took a shaky breath. "I know I messed up. I know I should have stopped Kevin. Should have told someone. But I was scared, and I was weak, and I made terrible choices. Is that an apology?" "Yes, I'm apologizing. I'm so sorry, Dad." I looked at her, waited. "I'm also here to beg for another chance. I know about the trust. I know you sold the house. I know you think I'm a terrible person. But I'm still your daughter. I'm still the girl you raised. And I'm asking you to please give me one more chance." "Why?" She blinked. "What? Why should I give you another chance? What have you done to earn it?" I'm sorry." I said I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix attempted murder, Heather. Sorry doesn't bring back the months Kevin poisoned me while you watched. Sorry doesn't explain why your biggest concern was how long it was taking. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. You were complicit. There's a difference. Her face hardened. Just slightly. Just enough to see the calculation behind the tears. Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I'll sue. I'll contest the will. I'll prove you were mentally incompetent when you made these decisions. There it was. The real Heather. The one who'd rather fight for money than admit real fault. You can try, I said, but I have medical documentation from 3 independent psychiatrists certifying my mental competence. I have notarized statements explaining exactly why I'm disinheriting you. I have the audio recording of you discussing my death with Kevin, and I have Victor Stewart, who's one of the best estate attorneys in Arizona. I'll still fight it. You'll lose, and you'll spend whatever money you have left on legal fees. Kevin's defense is going to bankrupt you both. You really want to add a contested estate battle on top of that? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a different voice, smaller, more desperate. What am I supposed to do? Kevin's going to prison. I lost my home. I have nothing. You have your job, your car, your life, which is more than you were going to leave me with. I can't live on what I make, not in Phoenix, not with Kevin's legal bills. That's not my problem. I'm your daughter. No. I looked at her directly. My daughter died the day she chose to let her husband murder me rather than risk being alone. You're just someone who looks like her, and I don't owe you anything. Something crumbled in her expression. The last bit of hope, maybe, or the last bit of pretense that we were still family. You'll regret this, she said quietly. When you're old and alone and you have nobody, you'll remember that you threw away your only child over money. I'm not throwing you away over money, I said. I'm cutting you off because you stood by while your husband tried to kill me. And if you can't see the difference, that just proves I made the right choice. I closed the door, locked it, Heard her stand there for a minute, maybe two. Then heard her footsteps retreat, her car start, drive away. I poured myself a drink, just one, my heart couldn't handle more, and sat on my balcony looking out at Tempe Town Lake. Watched the lights reflect off the water. My phone rang. Victor Stewart. Ralph, wanted to update you on the legal situation. Heather's attorney filed a notice of intent to contest the will. I figured she would. It's not going anywhere. I've already drafted our response. We have overwhelming documentation of your mental competence, clear statement of testamentary intent, and the audio evidence of her participation in the conspiracy. No judge is going to overturn this. How long will it take? Her attorney will realize within a month that they have no case. They'll advise her to drop it. If she's smart, she'll listen. And if she's not, then she'll waste 6 months and $20,000 in legal fees before a judge throws it out. Either way, the trust stands. Your estate is protected. We talked for a few more minutes about procedural details. When we hung up, I felt not happy, not satisfied, just tired. The next morning, I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Grant. First one since Kevin's arrest. I'd been taking my real medications consistently for a month now. The difference was remarkable. Dr. Grant reviewed my chart, ran an EKG, checked my blood pressure. Mr. Parker, he said, looking at the results, I have to say, this is the best I've seen you since your surgery. Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it. I cut some toxic elements out of my life, I said. Turns out that's good for the heart. He smiled, not getting the full meaning. Well, it's working. Your heart rhythm is steady. Blood pressure is normal. You're responding beautifully to the medications. If you keep this up, you've got a lot of good years ahead of you. A lot of good years. Ironic. If Kevin's plan had worked, I'd have been dead by now. Heart attack, probably attributed to complications from surgery. He and Heather would be selling my house, dividing the money, booking movers to San Diego. Instead, Kevin was in jail awaiting trial. Heather was fighting a legal battle she couldn't win, and I was healthy, alive, and free. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. That weekend, Mark Douglas came by to check on me, brought beer, the expensive craft stuff I used to drink before the surgery, and sat on my balcony with me. How you holding up? He asked. I'm alive. That's something. It's more than something. You're alive because you fought back, because you didn't just lie down and let it happen. Yeah. We drank in silence for a bit, watched people walking along the lake path below. You did the right thing, Mark said, with the house, the trust, all of it. Heather made her choice. You're not obligated to reward her for it. I know. But it still hurts. Yeah, I said quietly. It does. Because that was the thing nobody told you about justice, about revenge, about fighting back and winning. They tell you it'll feel good, that you'll feel vindicated, satisfied, complete, but they don't tell you about the hollow space it leaves behind. The absence of what used to be there, the relationships that can never be repaired. I'd won. Kevin was going to prison. Heather was cut off from any inheritance. My assets were protected. I was healthy and alive. But my daughter was gone. Not dead. Worse. Still alive. Still walking around, but dead to me. A ghost that looked like the child I'd raised, but had none of her soul. That hurt more than anything Kevin had done to me. My phone buzzed. Text from Agent Torres. Trial date set. December 15th. Prosecution is confident. We have everything we need. December 15th. 3 months away. 3 months until I'd have to sit in a courtroom and watch my son-in-law get sentenced for trying to murder me. 3 months until this whole nightmare would be officially over. I texted back, I'll be there. Set down the phone. Looked out at the lake. Justice was coming. Slowly, inevitably, like a freight train you could hear from miles away. Kevin Larson was going to pay for what he'd done, and I was going to be there to watch. 3 months passed like watching paint dry. Slow, tedious, inevitable. Kevin remained in Maricopa County Jail the entire time. His public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecutor's office rejected it. They had too much evidence, too strong a case. They wanted the full sentence. The trial began on a cold morning in mid-December. Federal courthouse in downtown Phoenix, courtroom on the 3rd floor. I arrived early, sat in the gallery, watched the room fill up. Kevin was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands shackled. He'd lost weight, maybe 20 pounds. His face was pale, drawn. He looked like what he was, a man staring down the barrel of the rest of his life. He saw me sitting there. Our eyes met. I didn't look away, didn't smile. Just watched him with the same expression I'd used for 32 years when transporting prisoners. Cold, professional, detached. He looked away first. Heather sat on the opposite side of the courtroom. Separate from me, separate from Kevin's family, who'd shown up but sat in the back, refusing to make eye contact with their son. She looked terrible. Thinner, older, like she'd aged 5 years in 3 months. The trial lasted 4 days. The prosecution built their case methodically. Gerald Mitchell testified first, explained the forged prescriptions, the suspicious medications, how he'd contacted the FBI. The jury listened intently. Then Agent Torres. She walked them through the investigation, the evidence collection, the computer forensics, showed them Kevin's Google search history projected on a screen. How much Adderall causes heart attack in cardiac patients? Undetectable ways to increase heart attack risk. Can prescription fraud be traced back to prescriber? The jury stared at those searches. A few of them looked at Kevin with disgust visible on their faces. Medical experts testified next. Dr. Grant explained my actual prescriptions, what I should have been taking. Then a toxicologist explained what the Adderall would do to someone in my condition. Racing heart, hypertension, arrhythmia, increased risk of myocardial infarction. In a patient who'd just undergone coronary bypass surgery, he said, high-dose amphetamines combined with withheld beta blockers create a perfect storm for cardiac arrest. It would look entirely natural. Would Mr. Parker have survived? The prosecutor asked. Unlikely. Given the duration and dosage, I'd estimate he had maybe 2 months before a fatal cardiac event. 2 months. I'd been 2 months from death when Gerald Mitchell noticed the discrepancies. The prosecution played the video from my hidden camera. The jury watched Kevin enter my bedroom at 2 a.m, watched him open my nightstand, watched him pour pills from a baggie into my medication bottles, shake them to mix, put everything back. The footage was damning. You could see Kevin's face clearly, see him checking over his shoulder, see the deliberate, careful way he tampered with each bottle. When the video ended, several jurors were shaking their heads. Then the prosecutor played the audio recording from Sherry Coleman. Heather and Kevin in the car discussing when I'd die, how they'd split the money, where they'd move. Kevin's voice, once he's gone and we sell the house, we split the money, 50-50. Heather's voice, how much longer do you think it'll take? The jury heard my daughter discussing my death like it was a delayed package delivery. Kevin's defense attorney tried. He really did. Argued that Kevin had been under severe financial stress, that he'd had a mental break, that he'd never actually intended to kill me, just wanted to adjust my medications to make recovery faster. Nobody bought it. The evidence was too overwhelming. The plan too calculated, too sustained over months. The defense's psychiatric expert testified that Kevin showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder, that his judgment had been impaired by stress and desperation. On cross-examination, the prosecutor destroyed that argument. Doctor, would someone with impaired judgment spend months researching cardiac medications, forging prescriptions, systematically documenting his searches? Would someone in the midst of a mental break be this methodical? The psychiatrist admitted, probably not. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. Prescription fraud, guilty. Attempted murder, guilty. Insurance fraud, guilty. Kevin's face when they read the verdicts, I'll remember that forever. All the color drained out. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Sentencing happened 2 weeks later. The judge was a woman in her 60s. Judge Patricia Morrison, been on the bench for 20 years. She'd seen everything. Nothing surprised her. But when she looked at Kevin, I saw something in her expression. Contempt. Mr. Larson, she said, reading from her notes, you systematically attempted to murder your wife's father, a man who had welcomed you into his home, trusted you with his health care, treated you like a son. You did this not in a moment of passion, not in self-defense, but coldly, calculatedly, over a period of months. You researched methods. You forged federal documents. You manipulated controlled substances, all for financial gain. Kevin tried to speak. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Her voice was ice. You targeted a vulnerable elderly man recovering from major surgery. You used your medical knowledge to select the perfect method, one that would appear natural, would avoid suspicion, would let you profit from his death. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was premeditated murder. She paused, looked at the sentencing guidelines. For prescription fraud under federal law, I sentence you to 18 years in federal prison. For attempted murder under Arizona state law, I sentence you to 20 years in state prison. These sentences will run consecutively, not concurrently. Total, 38 years imprisonment. Kevin made a sound, half gasp, half sob. You are 37 years old, Mr. Larson. You will be 75 when you are released. You will have spent more of your life in prison than you spent as a free man. That is justice. The gavel came down, final, absolute. Guards moved to take Kevin away. He turned, looked back at the gallery. Found me. Dad Ralph, he said, voice breaking. Please, I didn't want. Please tell them I'm sorry. I stood up, looked at him directly. Don't call me that, I said quietly. I don't have a son-in-law. I never did. They led him away. He was crying, stumbling. I sat back down. Heather was crying too, on the other side of the courtroom. As people filed out, she made her way toward me. I saw her coming, considered leaving, decided to stay. She stopped a few feet away. Dad, Heather, are you happy now? You got what you wanted. Kevin's going to prison for the rest of his life. I didn't want this, I said. Kevin chose this. You chose this. I just survived it. He's my husband. I love him. You loved his plan more than you loved your father. That's a choice you'll live with. She wiped her eyes. After the verdict last month, I wanted to tell you. I wrote you a letter. Did you get it? I thought about the unopened envelope I'd thrown into my fireplace, watched it curl and blacken in the flames. No, I said. Must have gotten lost in the mail. She knew I was lying. I could see it in her face. Will you ever forgive me? I looked at her, really looked at her, tried to find some trace of the little girl who used to sit on my lap during thunderstorms. Couldn't find her. Heather, when you were 7, you fell off your bike, broke your arm. I held your hand all night in the emergency room while they set it. You were so scared. You said, Daddy, I'm afraid. I promised I'd always protect you. She started crying harder. Then you grew up and let your husband try to kill me. We don't start over from that. We're done. I walked away, heard her calling after me, didn't turn around. Outside the courthouse, Agent Torres was waiting by her car. Mr. Parker, she said, wanted to let you know. Because of your case, we investigated the clinic where Kevin worked, found 3 other cases of prescription fraud, different victims, similar methods. You reporting this probably saved lives. Glad something good came out of it. How are you doing? Really? I considered the question. I'm alive. My daughter's gone. My son-in-law is in prison for 38 years. My house is sold. I'm living in a condo in Tempe. But I'm alive. That's not nothing. No, I agreed. It's not nothing. She shook my hand. Take care of yourself, Ralph. You too, Agent. I drove back to Tempe, back to my condo, back to my new life. That evening I got a call from Victor Stewart. Ralph, wanted to update you on the estate situation. Heather's attorney formally withdrew their challenge to the will. They finally accepted they had no case. Good. The trust transfer is complete. $847,000 has been transferred to the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation. They're using it to create a victim assistance fund. They want to name it after you, the Ralph Parker Memorial Fund. Memorial Fund, like I was already dead. Fine, I said. If it helps people, that's what matters. We talked for a few more minutes about paperwork, final details. When we hung up, I sat on my balcony, looked out at Tempe Town Lake, watched the sunset paint the water gold and orange. My phone buzzed. Text from Mark Douglas. Heard about the verdict. 38 years. Justice served. Proud of you, brother. I texted back. Thanks. Couldn't have done it without you. Mark, beer this weekend? Me. Yeah, I'll buy. The sun dropped below the horizon. The sky turned purple, then dark blue, then black. 38 years. Kevin would be 75 when he got out, if he got out. Prison does things to people. 38 years is a lifetime. I thought about Heather, about whether I'd done the right thing, cutting her off completely. Part of me, small part, getting smaller every day, wondered if I'd been too harsh. Then I remembered her voice on that recording. How much longer do you think it'll take? No, I'd done the right thing. Justice wasn't always satisfying, wasn't always clean, but it was necessary, and I'd survived. That was enough. The following month, everything fell into place. My health continued improving. Dr. Grant ran another full cardiac workup, EKG, stress test, blood work, the complete battery. When he reviewed the results, he actually smiled. Mr. Parker, your heart is in remarkable shape for someone who had bypass surgery less than a year ago. Whatever lifestyle changes you've made, they're working. Cut toxic people out of my life, I said. Amazing what that does for your health. He didn't get the double meaning. That was fine. Victor Stewart handled the final trust paperwork. The Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation officially launched the Ralph Parker Memorial Fund, dedicated to helping families of federal officers killed or injured in the line of duty. The foundation director called me personally to thank me, said my contribution would help dozens of families. That felt good, better than I'd expected. Agent Torres sent me a letter, not official FBI correspondence, personal note on plain paper. Said my case had led to a broader investigation of prescription fraud at Phoenix Heart Center. 3 other nurses were under investigation. My nightmare had exposed a systemic problem. You saved lives, Ralph, she wrote, not just your own. I kept that letter. One evening, sitting on my balcony, my ham radio crackled to life. I'd set it up in the second bedroom, same equipment from my old house, same frequency settings. Felt like home. Static cleared. A voice came through. KE7RPX. This is KL7 Alaska. Do you copy? I grabbed my headset. KE7RPX copying. Good evening, Alaska. How's the weather up there? We talked for 20 minutes. Ham operator from Anchorage, retired airline pilot, building ice sculptures in his spare time. Normal conversation. No mention of murder attempts or federal trials. Just 2 people talking about weather and hobbies and life. When we signed off, I realized I was smiling. First genuine smile in months. My phone buzzed. Text from Mark Douglas. Heard the verdict. 38 years. That's real justice, brother. Proud of you. I typed back. Just did what needed doing. Nobody poisons an old marshal and walks away. Mark, you're not old. You're experienced. And apparently hard to kill. Me. Apparently. I poured myself a glass of iced tea, doctor's orders, no alcohol except special occasions, and sat on my balcony. Watched the lights reflect off Tempe Town Lake. Watched people walking the paths below, living their normal lives. Sometimes I thought about Heather, about the daughter I'd lost. The pain was still there, probably always would be, but it was manageable. Like an old injury that aches when it rains, I'd made my choice. She'd made hers. We both had to live with them. Kevin would spend the next 38 years in prison. Heather would spend them knowing she'd chosen a murderer over her father, and I would spend them alive, healthy, free. The sun set over the lake. My radio crackled again, different operator this time, checking in from California. KE7RPX, how's the weather down there in Arizona? I looked at the sunset, at the clear sky, at my new home, my new life, my new beginning. Weather's beautiful, I said, and life is pretty good too. I signed off, went inside. Tomorrow I'd have coffee with Mark. Next week I'd start volunteering at the Federal Law Enforcement Foundation, helping other families navigate what I'd been through. Next month, who knows? But tonight, I was alive. I was healthy. I was free. And the old marshal had won. If you liked this story, subscribe to our new channel and listen to a few stories there. You can find the link to it in the collaboration or description of this video or in the comments. Subscribe so you don't lose us, because this channel may soon cease to exist.